Does it help when you can point to Brennan Johnson and Morgan Rogers, and the players who have been at the club in the not too distant past in the third tier who are now starring in the Premier League? Is that something you can use to your advantage in your strategy for recruitment, do you think?
Without being really simple about this, a number of years ago that was a glossy brochure that you'd sit down and you'd present to players, whereas now that we've got an evidence base, you can reel off the names of like you say, Brennan Johnson and many others that have gone further up in the football pyramid, and we watch them with great pride. Harry Toffolo's another great example of this. I hope Harry doesn't mind, but we often get Harry on the phone speaking to some of our players and our recruits that are coming in, and we ask him just to give us a real honest appraisal of what the football club is from his lens and his view as a player.
What do you feel like you've learned about yourself in the last 10, 11 months you've been at Lincoln?
Oh, that's a really good question. I didn't think I'd get that one.
I try and do one in interview at least. There won't be any more, don't worry.
To stay calm even in the pressure situations is probably a good trait that I think I have. I didn't realise it until this moment of I've learned that my calmness is quite a good thing in ways that other people, I didn't think it would be, but I think I'm quite a calm character and quite level, not too high, not too low when we win. And I think that really helps the group and helps the club at times because, as we know, football's emotional. I'm not that calm when I'm watching it as a fan, but I think for the job it is. But we know football's an emotional game. Everyone loves it. Everyone hates it. You win, you lose. But sometimes a bit of calmness, I think, is a good trait to have.
Do you feel like it's beneficial to the club of how you're not as reactionary as other clubs? Do you feel like that is something as well? Because we see the turnaround in managers and everything nowadays. Do you feel like that is something that is, I know you don't want to use the word unique, but do you feel that is something that is genuinely beneficial to the club and something you take an element of pride in?
Yeah, well, I do, yeah. I think the fact that, and like I say, it comes from ownership, but I think the fact that we have to be consistent in our behaviours, we have to be consistent in our thinking. If I'm the chief exec that's hopping up and down after a 1-0 defeat on a Saturday, I don't think it's going to give confidence to our team, our players, our supporters, our stakeholders, that we know what we're doing.
When you took the job, I mean, as your first managerial head coach role in football, was it something where you are aware of how it can be so volatile, the industry, that it was a club which does historically give managers more time to develop and get to where they need to get to?
Yeah, for sure. It's part of the thinking why I came to Lincoln, and was really impressed with the board, Clive, Harvey, all the other board members, and Liam and Jez, really impressed with the strategy they had in place. And I always think the coach needs to meet the project, and I think that's really important for me. But ultimately, we're in the industry of winning, and we have to win games, and we have to move forward, and that's also why I love it. I think I'm really privileged to be in football. I've been in it many years and love it. Love working with players every day. Love working in the industry. I think we're privileged to do that. So yeah, it's exciting, and you've got to win. But I wouldn't have it any other way.
So you're not the kind who's slamming his way into the dressing room at half time, no, demanding substitutions and results and that kind of thing.
Yeah, no, I won't fancy my chances at that. No, we try and remove the Lincoln City soap opera in that regard. That is for sure.
You're not throwing teacups at half time, no. Do they still have teacups in dressing rooms at half time? Is that?
Yeah, I have a cup of coffee and a cup of tea all the time, but the lads don't have that. So no throwing of teacups from me, but maybe one day I'll probably get there.
You'd obviously at some point had to put a plan together for whether you got promoted or whether you didn't. How different were the plans depending on whether you did go up or not? I mean, you didn't make the playoffs at the end, but obviously if you had or hadn't.
Lincoln City, we hope to be in that promotion fight every year, but the moment that you take your status in League One for granted is the moment that it could bite you as well. So it's almost being incredibly cognizant of that. Of course, part of the job as a chief executive is to plan for and have those multiple scenarios in mind. And of course, we were aiming for and hoping that we might have a chance to compete in the division above. But ultimately, that remains our stated aim. And, over the next few years at this football club, that is our aim.
How much of a lingering frustration was there with how last season ended going into the summer?
Yeah, I think it's always nice to go close, but close isn't getting there. And for me, it's always nice to go close, and we did really well. We had a great run in for the second part of the season, but ultimately we didn't make it. And it comes down to the last game of the season. It comes down to small margins in football. I think if we'd have scored the penalty in the 55th minute at home, we might have got into the playoffs, and you never know. But ultimately we didn't make it, and then we had to review and assess throughout the course of the season why we think we didn't make it, and then make adjustments and changes, if you like, or even like developments, and put a strategy in place where we think we can have another good go, which this season, but we know it's going to be really tough. We've seen all the leagues, we've seen all the money that's being thrown around and spent, but we're just trying to look after ourselves and do what we do, and hopefully we can keep performing them, and like I say, put performances on the pitch that hopefully turn into points.
Is there at the back of a filing cabinet somewhere a cobweb-ridden folder of what might happen if you get relegated to League Two, or is that just too negative a scenario to contemplate?
No, I think it would be incredibly arrogant and dangerous if the minute that you think that you're established in League One. This is an incredibly competitive division. I would assume there's going to be 16, 17 clubs in the division this year that would expect to give it a good fight and to get into the playoffs, if not promotion. There's probably 6 or 8 that would even expect to be promoted outright as well. So that, it doesn't need a mathematician to work out the balance of that, that there's not many clubs that are expecting to be in a relegation battle either. And like I said, the moment that you take your eye off that, 50 points has to be goal number 1. And I know that sounds incredibly lacking in aspiration, but of course that's what you have to do, and then you build from there. And I think that's exactly how we plan every season, and I'm sure most of the clubs as well.